Welcome back, everyone, for another episode of SpeakEasy with Eric and Cory. Per our promise last time, we're going to talk about battery backup. Before we get into that and you nerd out, didn't acknowledge it last time. I mentioned we had a new sign, but the Stevens brothers built this for us. They actually built this podcast set. They actually built this entire room in our loft above our office. So if you guys don't know Joe and Jeff, they're badasses, and surprise, we would like to have you guys on our podcast. I think having a general contractor share their experiences, I think that would be great information for you guys to get. So stay tuned for a future episode where we'll definitely have those guys on. You can't say no. Sorry. But also checking in. Last time, baby was 10 days old. Now, how old?
I think you said 10 days, but I don't think she was even 10 days at that point. She would be like 14 days or something.
That's it
now. Yeah. Yep. I think. No, I was off for 2 weeks, so that's 14 days.
What was her birthday?
Easy math. November
Failed.
18th. November 18th.
Sure about that?
Yeah.
Okay. I accept. Yeah, so I mean, we're approaching 3 weeks, right? So
Yeah. 20 days old.
still
21
good?
days.
Last time you were very much like, everything's great, and I'm sleeping, and my wife is letting me sleep. Everything's still great.
She's still, I feel like I was actually texting a friend about this today because they were asking me like, how you doing with no sleep? And I'm like, I don't know how I managed to convince my wife that my like shift for baby time is what it is. And it gives me like a single block of sleep that's pretty long. Whereas my wife's sleep is broken up. I am very lucky.
I don't even get a single block of sleep because I have to pee multiple times. Problem of getting old.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, so format today is going to be Cory's going to be doing most of the talking. So change of pace. Gross, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've got 4 questions here, so I'll walk you through it. I'll ask the questions, and you give the response.
Okay.
So
Hit me.
let's get in it. First question. Why is there so much interest around battery backup over the last few years?
Battery backup. Yeah. Batteries are becoming a bigger part of the energy space in general, with things like electrification, especially in the state of California where we are located. Batteries are part of the conversation for just your run-of-the-mill solar installation these days. So you've got to be able to produce energy and store it on site in order to get the full value of the financial benefit.
So you're referring to, obviously it's changes recently, but this is not new. Battery backup's not new. There's been interest around battery backup before the changes of the utility, which is what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, that's just why it's a conversation now, because inherently there's going to be a battery bolted onto every system. So that's why it's popular. But battery backup in the literal sense has been around as long as solar and batteries. That's how solar actually started. It wasn't grid connected. It was for people that lived off grid that needed power for a home or some kind of a radio tower or something like that needed power. That's how battery backup started.
We're talking like lead acid, like basically car batteries, right? That's essentially what this used to look like.
Old school, not a beautiful Tesla Powerwall or something like that mounted on your garage wall with no visible conduit. This was I hate to say like a little bit backyard, but like it was hodgepodge. Get this inverter that can do this function and then wire that to these batteries, and nothing is smart about it. And the output of a system like that was not ideal. It was very expensive to do and not super reliable. It needed a lot of maintenance. So we've come a long way.
Yeah, and I guess I've seen a few of these in garages. Right, I can't picture this being something that would be attractive in an average like track home garage for a standard house.
No, so like a lead acid system, you'd probably need. When you say car batteries, they're larger than car batteries. They're they use them in golf carts more specifically, but they're big. Probably, 1.5 by 1.5 by 1.5, cube. And you'd need, for like a single comparison to a Tesla Powerwall, something like that, you'd probably need 15 or 20 of those, I mean, you're taking up 6 or 8 times the space of a Tesla Powerwall.
I don't know about you and your I do actually know about your garage. You have a lot in your garage. You are very particular about it, but the average garage, when I see it go up in the morning and I'm driving to work, it's packed wall to wall. No one has room for like this 20 battery bank. And what do you, is there a container? It's in a closet. I mean, it was.
Depends on, like, back in the day, regulations were not necessarily in place. So the most common installation I saw was like a wooden box that somebody built out of plywood and 2x4s, and they racked these batteries in there. And
you said hodgepodge, right? So I mean, these were people.
It's a hodgepodge, yeah.
But anyway, so pivot point, right? I think it was about 10 years ago. A little guy, might have heard of him, Elon Musk, decided to do a pretty in-your-face marketing campaign for the Tesla Powerwall. And it really made it look sexy, right? We're not talking about an ugly, car battery bank or golf cart battery bank.
Right.
Better. I'm not the tech guy, so it went from looking like that, right? Something that you wouldn't want to be visibly seen to, of course, Elon put his spin on it, and it looked great. Like, it looked like a car hood. It looked like something that had nice curves to it. And you went from having, what did you say, like these 20 of these footprints to like one thing the size of that sign, right? Like a totally different footprint, a different aesthetic value to it. So that, for me, was a pivot point. Like, all of a sudden, he reached out and told everybody battery backup is something that you are interested in, whether you know it or not. And it's not going to look terrible.
Yeah, it definitely piqued people's interest. And also, like, the maintenance, the chemistry of the Tesla Powerwall is different from the, aforementioned golf cart batteries. So the technology just made a huge advancement. Somebody actually paid attention and did something with it, and, used tech to build something instead of hodgepodging, and it was a huge leap.
Yeah. And back to your first point, going all the way back to the first thing you said, where we're at now in California, 90% of people, I think that's the last stat I saw, are having batteries in their home because of changes in utility. So this is essentially a conversation that, whether you are thinking about backup or not, you've already got most of the equipment in your garage when you sign up for solar now in California.
Right.
So battery backup is just simply, do you want to pay the slightly more and have the slightly more equipment, to the extra sub panel mounted in your garage, right? That's essentially what we're talking about.
Yep. In general, yes.
Yeah. Simplified version.
Yep.
So, yeah. And that's, I think, to the point of the question, like, it went from, 10 years ago, or maybe I should say 11, since the Tesla announcement was 10 years ago-ish. 11 years ago, we weren't really talking about backup. If people sought it out, it was a very specific ask, and it was a little bit almost like,
they needed it for a specific reason.
You got to call the guy in the back of the room that knows, hey, I know you haven't talked about these lead-acid batteries in a couple of years, but come over here and talk to this customer, right? Versus now, it's a everyday conversation multiple times.
Yep.
So, huge change. So, all right, let's go into the second question, which is, what is the biggest misconception around battery backup?
Backing up your whole house. Everybody that, and I don't blame the homeowners because they don't necessarily know, but inappropriate design is kind of like the bane of my existence. So homeowners' expectations I'm getting batteries and I'm getting battery backup. I want access to everything in my home. I've got a 3,000 square foot, 2-story house with 2 air conditioners and an EV and my electric oven and an electric dryer. It's very difficult to design a system and understand how the customer is going to use all of that equipment and not have them have an issue when it comes time to actually need that system to operate. Okay, the utility's down and you have whole home backup without any intelligent design behind it, but you have access to every circuit and you don't know that the power's out necessarily. And you go and run your dryer, or you cook the Thanksgiving turkey in your oven for 2-3 hours and you drain every bit of your battery. Now you lose everything. Your lights are off, your microwave is off, you can't open your garage because there was no intelligence behind it. So the idea of whole home backup is it's possible, it's doable, but people's expectations just need to be kind of set on a level up.
So is there when you describe that, the idea of just using too much power, right? That sounds like a capacity thing, but batteries aren't just about capacity. It's not just, do you have one battery or two? Do you have this much power or twice that much power? It goes beyond that. Is there like a simple analogy for people to understand how to think about this?
I always explain it this way. I like cars. So there's two aspects to this. There's the inverter, which is like the engine of the car. You can have a lot of horsepower. You can have a little bit of horsepower to make the car go fast, right? So you can have a lot of an inverter with a lot of output to carry a lot of load. Or you can have a little inverter that doesn't carry very much load, so it can't handle a lot of stuff in the home. And then there's the fuel tank size. The size of the battery, how much storage there is, how long you can use those loads. So fuel tank and engine is how I like to describe it to people. And in order to do whole home backup, you just need a bigger engine and a bigger fuel tank than people generally expect, or unfortunately, what a lot of solar salespeople in the industry are proposing. Without smart control, it is going to leave some customers disappointed.
Yeah, fair to say. I mean, that's a great analogy. I think that one's kind of universal because I think most people looking for whole home backup, right, to continue this analogy of yours, they probably wouldn't be happy having a lot of power for 10 miles, and they wouldn't be happy going 100 miles, but only going 20 miles per hour, right? So you need both of those in conjunction with each other to be happy.
Yeah, or the converse of like going 100 miles an hour for a minute.
Right. That could be fun.
Why did you stop so quickly?
I'm sure you've done
did
that
you
before
hit a wall
in your life. I'm sure you've done that. 100 miles per hour per minute.
Never, ever. Okay, yeah.
You have. Just your wife's listening, so disregard Brittany. On a motorcycle?
Sure. Yeah. No. I never. Like I said, I've gone over 100 miles an hour in probably like every vehicle that I've ever, truck, car, motorcycle. If I had a scooter that could go 100 miles an hour, I would do that too, but I don't.
All right. Question 3. This might be like the one where you can kind of go all over the place on this, but like there's a lot of options to choose from. How would you recommend someone who's interested in battery backup get started? Like, what's the first thing you tell them to consider on this journey?
Well, I'm biased, and like in the other questions, I kind of mentioned the crux of this situation is homeowners want whole home backup, or maybe they don't necessarily need whole home backup, but they need to be coached on it, right? So the first step in approaching what do I need for my system is identifying what you need to have backed up, and what, like, obviously there's costs involved, right? So I'm willing to spend this amount of money on this layer of backup for my home. I'm willing to spend this amount of money on this layer and build the system that fits your budget. Everybody can't just go whole home backup when they don't need it or don't necessarily care. But there's some people that have valid reasons for wanting valid reasons other than I just want it, because that's a valid reason too. But sometimes people have like they care for elderly parents or something in the home, and they're like, if the power goes out and it's 110 degrees outside in the summer, I can't have 95-year-old mom in 110 degrees. Like, she can't do that. So there are people that need situations like that.
Special circumstance aside, I don't love this phrase, but I think it applies. There's a difference between necessities and niceties, right? What would you describe the necessities are in a home that everybody should consider as a starting place?
So the like rule of thumb that I apply is refrigerators, general lighting, microwave, garage door opener, things like that. Like, you can get through your house without stumbling. You don't need to get the candles out and the flashlights that the batteries are dead or whatever. That's why you paid for this system. So lighting, refrigeration, a means to cook food, and a means to get the car out of the garage. Anything beyond that, I would generally consider niceties or luxuries, because you don't need to be able to cook the Thanksgiving
turkey. And it doesn't mean you
and,
can't, right? So to give an example, my in-laws, right? They live on a property with a well. We did their solar system and their battery, and it was very important to them. It was kind of like a deal breaker. Like, we've always wanted our well power to be backed up, but obviously a well has pretty significant draw when it's running, albeit it doesn't run for a long time all at once. But like, what we did for them, right, was kind of like an isolating switch. So it's not constantly available, but there are ways to say, and this is kind of like, I guess, maybe I'm getting into my next question here, but that's unintelligent control of what you're using here in the loads. That's a way just to say, flip this switch, and all of a sudden this heavy load is now available. And that's what they have.
Yeah, so things have progressed over time. And so that was a good method of isolating a load that's very important to people, but they're going to go flip that switch manually and know in their head, okay, this load is isolated because it's kind of too big to run this and this. So now I'm picking this over this, and I'm switching from one to the other.
Right.
So that's the unintelligent method. Yep.
Awesome. So let's use that as this is the last question. We're going through this pretty quick. I figured you would, have the door cat on for longer, and I'd have to steer you away, but you're doing good. So
try not to put anybody to sleep.
Not yet. Last question. What does the future look like for this tech, and what are you most excited about?
This tech is advancing pretty quickly. Solar generally does. Like, the market's big for solar modules, batteries, inverters. And so things have progressed quickly, and I'm happy with the overall progression. The thing that I'm most excited about, you might think I would say battery technology, energy density, things like that. That is definitely me wearing the door cat, but I don't care about that. I don't need to waste a wish on progression of battery chemistry and tech, because electric vehicles and batteries being part of the typical solar installation are going to carry that flag for us. Right. What I'm excited about is intelligence in the space, load control, smart load management, energy use monitoring at the circuit level, so that I can design a system, kind of like the great example of your in-laws' house. They could have access to the well automatically, and it be controlled by power availability. What else is being used? Is the well in play right now, or is there too much else on the property being used and we can't give them access to the well, or vice versa?
Right.
And this can all be done with intelligence and software. And that's what I'm excited about. There's a lot of materials out there right now available to do this. And I want to see big advancements in that stuff. Not that I'm very happy with what is in the space right now, but there's a lot that can be done.
Fast.
Yep.
So fast. And just to paint some color to this for people that aren't, thinking about this every day like we are, right? Both of us have these intelligent load centers, right? These span panels, that's the manufacturer that we use. And my house has now one air conditioning unit. I've consolidated from 2 to 1. I've got one air conditioning unit. I've got an electric vehicle. I've got pool pumps. And then obviously your standard other
heat pump water heater,
right? So I've got a lot of stuff here. I've got a lot of electrical loads to consider. The smart load center that I have, this panel allows all the circuits to be in it, and I'm monitoring it from an app. And then they have this design where within the app, it's saying, what are the essentials? And I'm selecting the very specific circuits. So they're labeled, right? These are my kitchen lights, my refrigerator, my outlets, whatever it may be, right? Whatever's on that particular breaker, you're labeling it. And I have selected, these are when the power goes out, 100% of the time, these are on. Then there's the nice to have, right? So it's like, maybe this is your second layer of things that they're not necessarily like necessities, but they're things that might be very nice to have, right? So what might fall in the category of that? We're not talking about air conditioners yet, but what's like the next level?
That's where I would put air conditioner.
Next level, second tier.
Yeah, depending on the battery and the engine and the fuel tank. Depending on that, yeah, that's where I would land a single AC. Maybe not both, because then maybe
the upstairs where people are sleeping, the kids are sleeping.
Right. So you put one AC in there, and then you're going to the locked out level of don't need this stuff.
Then there's like the last one, right? Like the don't really need. I can't remember what the exact title is. Do you remember the?
Nope.
Doesn't matter. So this is your pool. This is your EV. This is the stuff that, like, look, if your pool filter doesn't run for a day or two, you're fine. If your EV doesn't have backup power, that wasn't going to be functional anyway. So this is stuff that really, it's in the panel because it's all pulled in there, but like not needed. So,
Yeah,
that's
our systems are set up with the EV charger in that thing, but like with certain integrated EV chargers, you can have access to an EV charger too.
Oh, it's
I think it's
outside of it.
important just to notate that, because I don't want all of our viewers to think that EVs are not within play with a backup solar system. It
Got it,
is.
right.
It just,
Tech in that space specifically for the EV charger has advanced where it's even outside of what we're talking about.
right, and maybe that's what I'm talking about is like when load control came into play, EV chargers were not necessarily a consideration, but they are becoming that. And that's the type of stuff that I'm excited about for the future. That load control and energy management is the future, not just for people with solar systems. I think that new home builders should be putting in this type of circuit level control and load management, regardless of if there's a solar system, because it's important for the future.
And the real world example was, right, so I live in a kind of the situation you described, right? The 3,000 square foot home in a track home, typical loads that you would expect to have there. And I had a outage, which don't last long, right? They're only a couple hours typically. And what happened was I got my app to activate. It told me via message, hey, you're off grid at this point, right? Your battery backup's engaged. And my wife called me, right, and confirmed, hey, the power went out. And I said, yeah, hey, just FYI, there's only gonna be certain loads powered. So if you want to use something outside of, I had rattled off the lights and the outlets in the fridge. If you need like your hair dryer upstairs, whatever, let me know, and I will flip that breaker on so you can temporarily use that power. So that's what you're describing.
Yeah.
It's not pulling, right? It's not available because it's protecting those critical loads, but it's available if you want it.
Right. So in the event that the pool pump was on, the EV was plugged in at home and charging, and the air conditioning was on at your house without load control, your engine, your inverter at your house would not be able to manage that. It would kill the engine, basically.
It would collapse everything.
So the system would turn off. And that is not the customer experience that anybody wants, right? I spent all this money on a battery backup system. Why in the heck would it just turn off in the middle of...
Or the other thing, it would have tapped the gas tank immediately, right? If those things were capable of coming on, my battery would have lasted for 10 minutes of that outage.
Exactly. So that's where the design... the importance of the design and working with a contractor that isn't going to sell you what you read on the internet or some other guy told you that you should get. They're going to sell you what you need. They have experience in this, and they're going to design it properly to work properly and give you the best experience.
I'm going off memory, which sometimes my memory you question, rightfully so. But I think when the power does go out, the number I see is something around 8 hours. My critical loads that I'm selected as always want them. They're around 8 hours, maybe 10 hours, maybe a little bit more, but kind of in that ballpark. That's going to survive me through 95% of all the outages, right? So we're talking about a very functional system here if it's designed correctly.
Yep.
So how about the idea of being off grid? It's possible right now, super expensive, but like, are we trending with new tech towards that being not only more functional from your standpoint with load control and everything being more intelligent, but also just price wise? Are we trending in that direction soon?
Well, I think it's safe to say that yes, I think it's safe to say that we're trending in that direction with solar and batteries still a better option than continuing to pay the utility. I'm seeing a lot of systems go in with that backup feature and everything and have an excellent return on investment for the customer rather than paying the utility. And then the functionality with this intelligent load control, I'm like, man, if people just right now, if homeowners wanted to just use things at specific times rather than whenever, right? Think about it this way. You've heard of like pre-cooling your house with your air conditioner, right? So if you've got a solar system on the roof making a bunch of energy, use all of that energy during the day. It fills up your batteries and then pre-cool your house with your air conditioning and do your laundry and all that stuff while you have this solar generation. People could be living off grid very soon. I mean, within the next 5 to 10 years, You could have people in track home neighborhoods.
Will you ever? Will you ever put your track home off grid?
I really like my air conditioning, but I've thought about flipping the breaker off and just seeing how long I could run. I think I could do pretty well. I think I could go for a while.
I mean, we've talked about this, right? So you have a substantial solar system. So do I. We both have battery backup. I have a generator at my house. We've talked about this before, the idea of having sort of like you flip your main breaker, I flip my main breaker. We're basically working off our battery, right? That's it. The grid is isolated. We're away from it.
You're talking about a competition.
I'm talking about a competition.
Okay.
So look, you have what do we decide on? 3-week-old baby.
Right.
You're going to be at a little bit of disadvantage here, but like this would be pretty interesting, I think, to essentially flip both our mains and maybe just show people what life would be like with current technology. Like how far can we push this?
This is
like, look, I have
fun
a pool.
idea.
I've got an EV, so I'm going to have to think this one through. But like, it'd be interesting to see with modern technology right now, how real is this?
Let's develop some guidelines, some rules, because your generator puts me at a little bit of a disadvantage.
Assuming the contractor that installed it did it good a job.
Right. I don't have an EV, company. So I'll need to borrow one of yours. Thanks, buddy. So let's balance it a little bit, but yeah, let's develop these rules and let's do a little competition.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing my family with the lights on, yours with candles.
Yeah. Okay, we'll see.
I'll get a call from your wife. She won't be happy.
Yeah.
So let's do this.
It's going to cost you a bunch of money to fix your green pool after this competition is over, but
yikes.
Whatever.
Well, let's do it. I think that would be fun. Let's definitely do it and record it and let's show it. I mean, a lot of people ask about it, right? Off-grid is a dream for a lot of people. Is it a reality right now? Maybe. I think we're close. We're at the right time of the year, so it's December.
I'm gonna want some bit more solar production.
Spring would be better. Spring would be better.
Let's just.
But the air conditioning unit isn't kicking on. Is my point. So I think we might actually. This might actually.
Let's try it. We should try it. We should try it 2 times a year or something like that. But for starters, we need to develop the rules, balance the load a little bit, and see what can happen. If we're gonna show it to the all of our podcast viewers, then I'm gonna have to clean my garage up. So,
good luck.
Let's get to work.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us for another episode, and we'll see you next week.